me now is VM Group's Gary Mead. Hi, Gary.
Morning.
Let's start with oil, just coming down a little both on Brent and WTI in the last day or so. Where now?
It's difficult. You have to put it in perspective, I think. I think the market's overshot themselves slightly. Libya accounts for about 1.6 million barrels per day. That's not a huge amount of oil. Back in the Iranian Revolution, there was something like 5.6 million barrels per day out of action. So I think probably the markets are trying to assess, well, is Gaddafi going to win or not? And that's the clue to the next direction.
And if Gaddafi does, I mean, what are the two likelihoods? I mean, if he wins, what happens to oil? And if he doesn't win, what happens to oil?
Well, I think it's problematic in both cases, actually, because a victorious Gaddafi is not necessarily going to mean calmer oil prices, because the West has been pretty unanimous about beating him up over what he's been doing, and that doesn't necessarily spell good things for the future. So, I mean, I think oil prices are going to stick around this level for a while.
Yeah. Let's move on to other commodities, Garrett. There's so much to chat about. Events in the Ivory Coast, putting the spotlight on both cocoa and copper. But in Ghana, we've got higher production of cocoa, so that's just slightly pushed downwards on prices. So which one should we be focusing on when it comes to cocoa, Ivory Coast or Ghana?
I think you should be focusing on Ivory Coast, really. I mean, people forget that in the civil war, cocoa still managed to get out of the country just by very circuitous routes, I mean, smuggling, essentially. You said that Ghana's purchases are up by 40%. Well, you know, even though they're saying production's been great this year, and no doubt weather has been good this year, I think a lot of it is smuggled Ivory Coast cocoa.
The top commodity of this year so far is cotton. It's up by 40%. It's doubled, more than doubled in the last year. Demand outstripping supply. Some say that's continuing. Is cotton's run going to continue?
Well, I do think so. I mean, China is the world's biggest consumer of cotton, and its productivity of cotton this year is likely to be down. We've got a long time before the next American harvest comes in. Certainly American farmers are going to plant much more cotton this year than they did last year. But there is a squeeze. I don't mean a squeeze on the markets. I think there is a physical supply-demand squeeze in the offing. I still think cotton could go further. And
final question, Gary. I mean, this is the one that fascinates me. With so many commodities at multi-year or record highs, how do you place your bets right now?
Fortunately, I'm not a trader. I just look at the markets. I still think that gold is it's pretty high, but there's such uncertainty around at the moment that gold could go higher.
How high? I mean, what are we now? 1,400?
Well,
we're 1426 today. The record's 1444.
Well, with oil prices so high, it's going to stifle growth. And that's going to mean that interest rates in the US continue to remain low, probably throughout this year. No movement, I don't think, this year. America is very, very leveraged in lots of ways. I think that consumers are still interested in gold as a hedge against all risks, actually.
Gold, the one to watch. Gary, thanks a lot. We'll speak to you soon. VM Group analyst Gary Mead there.